Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Welcome back to another Premier League Roundup. We're finally back. It's been a crazy, hectic couple of weeks. One week, Kendall and I couldn't make it, and then there was a break. But now we are back, super, super happy, and we have a ton of things to talk about after all of the Premier League action that happened this past weekend. But first, Ken, how's it going? How are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Really, really good. Nice to be back. It's nice to have Premier League football back as well. There was a bit of drama over the weekend, so yeah, let's get into it and talk about it because a lot happened over the weekend in the games. A
Yeah,
lot
it
happened.
did. So the first thing that I want to talk about before we go into any of the games is obviously there's a massive talking point that's VAR and the VAR controversy that happened in everybody's reporting two games. I'm going to throw in a third because I think that there was VAR controversy in the Chelsea game as well. But basically, Arsenal were on the wrong side of a decision during their 1-1 draw against Brentford after replay showed that Ivan Toney's equalizer should have been ruled out. VAR official Lee Mason checked and cleared the incident, but did not fully investigate it by drawing the offside line, and the checks took 3 minutes. So for this incident, Kendall, do you think that maybe he felt pressured that the checks had already taken 3 minutes and that he just needed to get something quickly and forgot to draw the lines? Like, how does that happen?
I don't know how there's any excuse to not be able to draw lines, which is something so simple and something that we're very, very used to with VAR now, with these offside lines and things like that. I don't know how an official of so long, he's probably been an official, 10 plus years, how you can suddenly forget to check offside, draw the lines. I just think it's a terrible excuse. Obviously, there's been apologies handed out and Howard Webb and things like that have gone and given apologies. But what's that going to do? That's for me, that's a match changing decision. And it has ended up with Arsenal. I mean, I'm not saying Arsenal would have definitely won because they might not have, but however, in terms of context, it is a match changing decision. And that's left Arsenal, who are at the top of the table, who are fighting for the title, with less points than they may have had if that had been ruled out. So yeah, for me, I just think there's absolutely no excuse. And as you said, that's not the only one that's happened this weekend and not the only game-changing one that's happened this weekend. So yeah, it's really, really, it's embarrassing really from them, from their behalf. And yeah, I don't even know how you can change this going forward, because the problem isn't the technology, the problem is the officials using it. And yeah, it's absolutely, it's crazy. I don't even know how he could say he forgot. That's like the worst excuse. Oh, I forgot. I mean, you forgot to do your job. Okay then.
It's like a lot of pressure. Like in my job, if I forget to do something, the stakes aren't so high, but in this job, it's a lot. And one of the other big VAR decisions was that Estupiñán had a goal ruled offside incorrectly as well, because the VAR official John Brooks drew the line from the wrong player. And something that came out of this, and something that's interesting that you were saying, what can we do about it? He's been replaced as the VAR for Arsenal versus Man City and tonight's Merseyside derby. So Andre Mariner and David Coote will assume the VAR duties in his place on Wednesday, which I thought was interesting. But that's another one. How do you pick the wrong defender to draw the line from? And it, all of these incidents as well ended up in 1-1 draws, which are really affecting the table and affecting potential positions, like you mentioned, Arsenal's title race, or for Brighton to potentially get a European spot. Who knows if they had gotten a win? It really is a massive problem, and it's just so shocking.
Yeah, I feel like every single week there's something to talk about with VAR, and the whole point of bringing it in was, I know a lot of people were against it. I was very much against it in the beginning, but as I saw how it worked in other leagues, specifically La Liga, which I think it is a very efficient system in La Liga, I mean, it's used pretty well. And I was like, you know what, we can benefit from using this in the Premier League. But it just seems like every single other week we are talking about a game-changing decision by VAR, and it's just become a huge issue. The problem is you can replace these officials for a few games, but they're just going to keep on making the same mistakes. And there are replays there. There are every single angle you could possibly think of. There are a million replays for you to get a decision correct. There's 6 VAR officials in a room, plus the referee, plus the 4th official and 2 linesmen as well. You are now getting to a point where you have got enough backup to make the right decision. And the whole reason why I brought this in was to obviously rule out quick, clear and obvious error. So, for me, there's just no excuse at the moment. Something needs to be done. Howard Webb, who's now obviously assumed the role of, I don't know his official title, but he is the head of VAR and match officials or whatever it is. So he really needs to come out and he needs to explain what's gone on, and he needs to let us know how this is going to be improved going forward. Because, as we say, it just, on the surface of things, I can see why people are saying that it's cheating or some sort of match fixing / corruption, because I can see it. I wouldn't, put that beside anyone to not say things like that, because it is becoming really, really a big issue now, when it was meant to alleviate these issues in the first place. So, I don't know what's going to happen going forward.
Yeah, and what can happen, and I think the frustrating thing is that you're seeing week in, week out that there's constantly some issue with VAR, and it's not even being used like the same way, or applied, the rules are applied the same way. You see something that was ruled out for VAR, another thing that was given, and it's just super, super confusing. But I do want to jump into the Premier League games. So, guys, basically, I'm going to give you a little summary of what happened in the match, and then Kendall and I are going to be chatting about it. And make sure, if you have any questions, if you want us to talk about anything that happened in any specific match, make sure to drop them in the comment box. So, first up, we're going to be talking about Arsenal versus Brentford. This ended in a 1-1 draw. Arsenal were looking to put their disappointing defeat versus Everton behind them, but they left a lot to be desired. In the first half, Arsenal created more chances, but Brentford did have a higher expected goals, and they probably felt that they could have been 1 or 2-0 up going into the break, especially when Ivan Toney hit the bar from close range. So Arsenal came up flying in the second half, but they couldn't find an opener until substitute Trossard tapped in the ball through a fizzing cross by Bukayo Saka. And however, that advantage didn't last long, because Ivan Toney slotted in a looping header, which, as we spoke about, should have been ruled for offside, but it wasn't. The interesting thing here, I feel like a lot of people talk about Arsenal. Brentford have now extended their unbeaten run in the Premier League to 10 games, which I think is just absolutely mad. But Ken, it's more drop points for Arsenal. So what do you think is the reason for this?
Honestly, I don't know. I just think they had, I was saying this for a long time, and I think Arsenal have played extremely well this season. They've been the best team to watch. They have, obviously, it shows them at the top of the table. But you cannot be at 100% intensity week in, week out. It's impossible as athletes and as footballers. The amount of games that you have and the scheduling and just the mental toll that things take on you, you cannot always be at 100%. So obviously the defeat against Everton last week, that was probably really mentally tough on them, because they weren't expecting it. And then we've got into the weekend's games, and a team like Brentford, who are doing really, really well, actually. I think they're flying under the radar a little bit like Brighton are. And they have brought the game to Arsenal, and Arsenal just can't seem to, unfortunately, I don't know what's going wrong somewhere along the way, but they're just not at their intensity and their really clinical play that they have been at. They're getting chances, like even when we played them in early January, and it was 0-0, they were getting the chances, they were attacking, they were pressing really high, but they weren't getting the goals. So yeah, I just think every team kind of has to have an off period. Pretty much everyone at the moment is on an off period. I don't know what is going on, but it's like midway through the season, and like a lot of the teams specifically at the top are struggling at the moment. So yeah, I just think it's one of those things, because personally for me, I can't necessarily pinpoint anything, because I think they've recruited well, and they've got a little bit of squad depth and quality now. So yeah, I can't pinpoint anything, because they were doing well without Jesus, and he's still not back. So yeah, it's an interesting one at the moment, but everyone just seems to be falling off at the minute. I don't know what's happening.
It's so crazy, and I'm like so upset that Chelsea aren't capitalizing, because
I say this about us as well. I'm like, we keep drawing every single week, and it's like, we'll probably get into it, but I keep saying the way that everyone's dropping points around us, like we'll never have a better chance of making top four, like an easier chance of making top four. So yeah, I am with you on that one. It's just so frustrating when you don't capitalise on things like that.
Yeah, well, let's move into Newcastle then, since you provided such a good segue. So Bournemouth versus Newcastle again ended in a draw, 1-1. This was Newcastle's 11th draw of the campaign, the most out of any side in the Premier League. They conceded the opening goal for the first time in 15 Premier League games, with the last occasion actually also coming against Bournemouth in September, which I thought was a really fun fact. The Cherries took the lead through Marcus Sensei as he converted a corner at the back post, and just before halftime, Miguel Almiron responded with a finish to draw Newcastle level, which took his goal tally for the season so far to 10 goals in the Premier League. Bournemouth earned a point in their relegation battle. They're tied on points with 18, but they're in 19th because of goal difference. And Newcastle missed an opportunity, like you mentioned, to put some distance between them and Tottenham. So again, one of the things that I noticed is that Newcastle are just struggling to score goals at the moment. So why do you think that that's happening?
I honestly don't know, because we were so fine before Christmas. Obviously before the World Cup. The World Cup came at a really bad time for us, because the momentum was with us at that point, and we were going into games and winning them by quite some distance. But since in the league, obviously because the cups have been a little bit different, but in the league since Christmas, since we played Leeds, we haven't been at all clinical. Callum Wilson's been fit. He hasn't been scoring. Almiron's purple patches seem seemingly over at the moment. Obviously we're without Bruno at the moment as well, he is a massive miss. He'll be back for the final, but yeah, he's just a big miss. And obviously Joe Willock getting injured at the weekend, that doesn't help. So yeah, it's really frustrating to watch. In fact, it was probably the worst game we've played this season at the weekend. But the only good thing is, I would say, the positive thing is that we're still not losing, even though we're playing very badly. We're not losing, which to me means a lot. It's worth more than how we play at the moment. So yeah, we just need. I think this final is playing on everyone's mind.
Yeah,
you know, it's massive. It's the biggest occasion that we've had in 24 years as a club, and yeah, I think it's playing on everyone's mind. So we just got to get that out of the way, I think, and then maybe, who knows, maybe our form will come back. But yeah, we're struggling at the moment.
Yeah, I forgot about that. The finals coming out. That's super exciting. I'll be rooting for Newcastle.
I think everyone who's not a Man United fan's like, yeah, I want Newcastle to win. Yeah. I've never felt like I've never had that before. Like no one's ever like wanted us to win anything. So yeah, but I'll be at the game. But I am nervous for it. And then we've got Liverpool, the only team that we've lost against this season, at the weekend. So yeah, it's all just. I think the pressure's obviously getting to everybody, and we've had a couple of injuries. Callum Wilson was out again at the weekend. Alexander Isak was out the week before, so we're kind of in a little bit of limbo. But as I said, most of the teams at the top of the table are genuinely in limbo at the moment, and this is really frustrating. Where I think that we should be capitalising now, because we're never going to have this amount of chain of events that work in our favour yet, and we're never going to have that again. That's just the facts. Everyone's going to strengthen. There's some probably, players come and go and managers come and go. So we're never going to have this, as I say, chain of events that's positive for us. So I just wish we would capitalise. But yeah, at the moment, it doesn't seem to be connecting for whatever reason.
Yeah, and do you think that, kind of seeing, well, let me rephrase. When we spoke at the beginning of the season, you told me like I've got the feeling that you never would have even imagined being in like a top 4 race for Champions League football, that was something that was going to happen down the line, but you're kind of trying to build, 10th up, maybe get Europa League, something like that. And now you've been clearly in the top 4 for the majority of the season. So do you think that that's putting the pressure on the players, and maybe like, oh my God, we actually have a chance to get Champions League football, and maybe they're starting to feel the pressure? And follow-up question, do you still have those same expectations now? And what are your expectations really for the rest of the season? What would you be happy with?
Yeah, I think the pressure is getting to the players, because most of these players, I mean, apart from Kieran Trippier, who's obviously won a league with Atleti in La Liga, not a lot of these players have experience of playing at the very highest level. I mean, I'm pretty sure Botman and Bruno have probably played in the Champions League and with their previous clubs. However, just competing at the top level, especially in the Premier League, not a lot of these players have got that or have that. A lot of the squad's very young. And obviously, this is Eddie Howe's first taste of this sort of height, of these sorts of heights as well. So I just think the acceptance and the kind of pressure is a lot at the moment. But the way Eddie Howe's handled it and the way the players are handling it are really, really good at the moment. As you say, we've been there pretty much most of the season. So we're there on merit. It's not because of anything else. But yeah, so the way I put it is my expectations have changed. However, my happiness hasn't. So even if we finish 8th, I'll still, and people are saying, no way, because you've been in the Champions League places all season, you won't be happy with 8th. No, I will be, because that to me is progress, and that was all we wanted at the start. And I won't change my hope for that, because I just think we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. Where we are right now, we're way premature in our plans, like way overachieving at the moment. And yeah, so I'll still will be happy regardless of where we finish. I think top 8 now is very feasible. I had us finishing 9th at the beginning of the season, so yeah, I'll still be happy with top 8, but my expectations have changed as the season's gone on. I've seen how we played. We have been consistently top 4. We haven't been out of the top 4 for a number of months now. We're in a final of a cup, our first final in 24 years. So yeah, my expectations have changed, but my content hasn't, if that makes sense. So yeah, I would hope that we would at least finish in Europa League spots now, but you never know.
Yeah, and I think the thing that maybe a lot of people forget or don't realize is that the Premier League is a marathon. It's not a sprint. So you could have a run of really good games and you could be in one of those top spots, but then you have to keep it up. And it's really, really difficult to keep up that momentum. And I think that that's something that Man City tend to do really well, especially in the second half of the season. They just know how to push and how to dig in. And that's something that you learn. That's something that comes with experience. And it's a lot easier said than done. So it wouldn't be surprising to me that you have a team that does well. And we saw it with Leicester a couple of seasons ago, that they were in the top 4 the entire season, and then they kind of fizzled out and they couldn't get the performances. Not saying that that's going to happen with Newcastle, because, you know, like you said, all of the teams around them as well are starting to drop points. But it's something to take in mind. So, I'm not sick. I've been too sick.
Speak into existence.
Not getting sick again. Not happening. Before I move on, I just wanted to say thank you for this comment. This is really nice. Thank you so much for tuning in on Chelsea TV. It's really awesome to be on every match day. Even though I'm from Zoom, it's still really cool. So thank you so much for watching. I want to move on to one of, in my opinion, the most interesting games of the weekend, which was Leeds versus Manchester United. It felt like Leeds could have won this game, but United ended up snatching it 2-0. So United went into this game having seen Newcastle, Arsenal, Spurs all dropping points around them, so they knew that they could capitalize on this opportunity. And in the first half, Leeds actually got off to a better start, and United were struggling to get on the ball. And early in the second half, Harry Maguire gave the ball away to give to Leeds a chance, which Harrison put wide. They had a poor start to the second half, and Ten Hag decided to bring on Lisandro Martinez and Alejandro Garnacho, which really changed the game for them. And eventually they took the lead after 79 minutes when Luke Shaw floated a ball in, and Rashford, who's in fantastic form, headed it in. And then Garnacho scored just 5 minutes later again to secure United the win. But it's interesting because I felt that this was really going in Leeds' favor. They have more shots on target, more corners in this match, but they still lost. So I feel like they're a little bit hard done by. But do you think that this was a fair result? Maybe it's just the type of thing that the big teams end up grinding out results. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. It comes with that quality and depth, and just that high level experience that people have got. I think Ten Hag has done a fantastic job at Manchester United this season. They're probably in the league. They're probably playing the best football at the moment. They're on immense form, and again, they've got the final to look forward to as well. So Rashford is probably playing the best football of his career, and he's one of the best on-form players in Europe right now. So, I did feel really, really sorry for Leeds because, as you say, I thought they had a really decent grip on the game, actually, especially in the first half. But both times they've played Manchester United lately, they've looked like they're going to come out with some sort of points. And obviously at the weekend they didn't. But yeah, 2-0 I think is very flattering towards Manchester United. But it's how they are at the moment. It's how they are under Ten Hag, and it is how Manchester United are playing at the moment. So it's not really good viewing for Newcastle fans at the minute, especially going into the final, because you kind of want a team to not be performing as well as they are when you're going to play them. But yeah, they're capitalised and we're not. Manchester City obviously capitalised at the weekend, but Arsenal aren't, Spurs aren't, etc., etc. So you've just got to take your chances, and they've took it. So they're playing really, really well at the moment.
Yeah, Marcus Rashford's been insane already. 12 goals in the Premier League this season, and Ten Hag has just absolutely unlocked him. And United now sit in third. They were sitting in second right before City played. They're 2 points behind City, having played one more game, and 5 points behind Arsenal, having played 2 more games. So have to take that into consideration.
Yeah.
But could they realistically be in a title race? Like, I feel like this entire season we've kind of been saying Arsenal versus Man City. But United are showing that they have what it takes as well, and they're winning their games while others are dropping points.
Yeah, as you said, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And if they put a win and run together while everyone else around them is dropping points, they 100% can be in a title race. And I know people want to say that they're not. And obviously Arsenal got games in hand. Man City's got a game in hand. We've got a game in hand on Manchester United. And I wouldn't say that we're anywhere near a title race. But as I say, they are probably the most informed team in the league at the moment. So it's not beyond the Premier League, as we saw with Liverpool last season. It's not beyond a team in the Premier League, especially at the top, to put a run together of games to win and get there. So yeah, I don't think necessarily they're in a title race at the moment, but I wouldn't actually rule it out over the next 3-4 games, because the title race now is a lot closer than I think anyone expected it. I was just, at this point, halfway through the season, I was expecting Arsenal to run away with it, really. So it's crazy. So yeah, I think they probably could be in the next 3 or 4 games, obviously depending on how everybody else plays. So it's crazy at the top again. As always.
I wasn't expecting this, and I'm like, oh, why are Chelsea having this rebuild season? Because we could have taken advantage and been competing. But moving along, I won't touch on Tottenham too much. But Leicester versus Spurs. Leicester, I didn't see this coming at all. Destroyed Spurs 4-1. What the heck happened there? They really got the job done in the first half. They overcame a 1-0 deficit. I can't say that word. Deficit. Oh my God. Oh my God. My brain just went.
It's Monday. We will allow it.
Deficit. I swear I know how to talk English, guys. Oh my God. That was bad. Deficit to lead 3-1 by the interval. They had goals from Mendy, Madison, and Nacho to seal the deal, canceling out Bentancur's opener. But Barnes thought that he had made it 4 with just under 20 minutes remaining, but a tie offside. Saw it ruled out, but he eventually went on to score. Leicester moved up to 13th in the league, while Spurs stayed in 5th. So like we've been kind of mentioning the entire stream, missed opportunity for Spurs to gain points, but I've just seen on Twitter that Bentancur has ruptured his cruciate ligament. How big of a blow is this for Spurs?
Yeah, it's massive. Bentancur, since they signed him, has been immense. He had injury problems again last season. But yeah, he's just so good when he plays. He's going to be a big miss, especially at the moment. As we say, they, again, really, really need to capitalise. He's going to be a huge miss. But it links into what I've been saying. For me personally, as a Newcastle fan, like these chain of events, we're never just going to have things like this that are happening. Chelsea and Liverpool having bad seasons. Now, like Tottenham's key player is injured for the rest of the season. He's not going to play again. Man City aren't doing very well. Man United had a really bad start. Just everything about it is just we really need to like start capitalising on these things. But yeah, it is so ridiculously Spursy to go and beat Manchester City and then get absolutely smashed off Leicester, who have been at the bottom of the table for like literally since the start of the campaign. It's just so Tottenham. Like you couldn't write it for any other team. It's just so Tottenham. But yeah, obviously they've had injury problems and their manager Conte was really ill, and yeah, I don't know what's happening there, but I've seen a lot of Tottenham fans lately saying Conte out, actually. And yeah, and I was listening to the radio earlier, and there was a caller in on one of the stations, and he was like, you know what, at this point I am Conte out, because I don't understand why he persists with the same formation. I don't understand why he persists with the same players who don't deserve to play. And I'm pretty sure that's like very familiar territory to Chelsea fans who know Conte very well. So yeah, I don't know what's happening with them this season. They just, again, people think they're having a bad season, but they're still fifth, despite the fact that they've played some really bad games and they're only like decent for one half of football. So yeah, it's just it's a bit weird. It's just very Tottenham-esque.
It is. They have 2 wins out of the last 5, but the thing that I feel with Tottenham is that they're like either very up or very down. Like they'll have these amazing wins versus Man City, and then they'll go on to lose a couple of games in a row, or games that you really expect them to win. So if anybody in the comments knows exactly what's happening with Spurs, let us know. It just seems to be kind of a lot of things mixing together. And maybe, again, a difficult season. So they're sitting in 5th. They've played one more game than Newcastle, and they're 2 points behind them. And Brighton are 4 points behind Spurs, but they have 2 more games to play. So if Brighton win both of their games in hand, they could go above Spurs as well. So I think that that's a really interesting one. Ken, do you think that Spurs make top 4 this season?
Obviously I don't want to in place of us, so like no. But no, just watching them this season, I don't, because again, they're just not consistent enough. They, as you say, they're very up and down. They're either winning 4-0 or getting beat 4-1 by a team in the bottom half of the table the next week. So yeah, I just don't think they've been consistent enough this season. And again, Bentancur is going to be such a miss, a huge miss. So yeah, I just, for me personally, I just can't see them putting together now, because they're going to have to pretty much win like most of the games now. So yeah, I can't see it personally for me, and I don't want it to be in place of us. So I'm hoping with that every single thing crossed that they don't.
I would honestly be surprised, to be honest, if they make top 4. I would be surprised. Yeah. Cool. So there's a couple of people watching, just over 20. We're gonna get that up as we start being more consistent with this. But if you're liking the stream, if you're liking the content, make sure to drop it a like, comment in the video as well, and follow the channel so that we can have more people find us as well. Make sure to follow Ken as well. Next, I want to talk about Man City versus Aston Villa, and I watched like half of this match. And it was pretty crazy because Man City went into this game knowing that Arsenal dropped points, so they had this massive opportunity to close points. They also had dropped down to 3rd with Manchester United's win. They opened up the scoring after just 4 minutes when Rodri headed home from Amar's corner. Gundogan had the ball in the back of the net, but it was rolled out because apparently Emi Martinez was fouled by Erling Haaland in the build-up. I thought that was more of a 50-50 challenge, so I was personally surprised that got ruled out. But a few minutes later, Gundogan scored, and Mahrez scored a penalty as well. Not all good news for City fans, though, because Erling Haaland was taken off at halftime due to a thigh injury, and I had triple captained him in FPL this week, so I'm freaking living.
And I hadn't triple captained him, but he's my captain as well, because they had 2 games, so I thought surely he's got to do something this week, because again, he's been off form. Obviously, Man City haven't been playing the best. So I was like, look, I'll captain him and I'll vice captain an Arsenal player, because again, they've got 2 games as well. So yeah, and then he's just gone to pot and now he's injured, and I'm like, oh, what is even the point? Only me. Like, well, you said you do it as well, so don't feel as bad now.
I just like, why? Like, I have the worst luck with this freaking game ever. I'm so pissed about it. That's another stream. We have to do an FPL stream. Yes. That's another stream. But we kind of talked about it a little bit earlier in the stream, but Man City needed to win this game, and they did. they've closed the gap with Arsenal. And I'm just taking a look. It's now just 3 points. Arsenal do have a game in hand, but they play each other midweek. So since City have a better goal difference, if they beat Arsenal midweek, they will go top of the table with Arsenal having a game in hand. How do you see that going? Because I feel like City go on to have these winning runs, and they know that it's a marathon. And Rodri was speaking about that in his post-match conference, saying, or post-match interview, saying, well, we're just taking it day by day. We're just trying to get every single win that we can. And they tend to just go on these runs and steamroll the opponents because they just can't keep up. So do you think that we're going to see that going forward? Do you think that they're more likely to win the title now?
I had it with Arsenal, and I still have it with Arsenal, because I just think, again, as I mentioned earlier, they've just been the best team to watch this season, and what Arteta has done has been exceptional. But I think this is where, and I know people will change their tune week by week, because at one point Arsenal were like 10 points clear or whatever, and everyone was like, oh, it's Arsenal's league to lose. But I think now is where you'll see the experience come into play. Now is where you will see the players who are used to this title race. They are used to this long, grueling schedule. They are used to these really high pressure games. In the Manchester City players, you'll see that now, and you will see the gulf of difference. I still think Arsenal win the league. Personally, for me, anyway, I think they will. But you just cannot look past the experience of Manchester City and how used to a title race they are. So yeah, I agree. They know it's a marathon. They've got the minerals, and they've got the attitude to go on these long runs. And we always see it second half of the season. Manchester City put together a fantastic unbeaten run, and it gets them the title. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it was like a last day thing now in terms of the league. So everyone keeps saying that it's going to be like the title decider against Man City and Arsenal this weekend, but I don't think we're there yet. I think it's going to be a very, very long dragged out season. It's going to be very, very last minute for me, I think, this season. So we'll definitely see.
Yeah, so many top dogs. Like me trying to
Do you
steal
know what?
the
He never know. He bothers me normally. So I don't know. He just, for some reason, he's just showing off. He's just wanting attention, I think. So
My dog was barking earlier, and I was like, "Oh, are you too now?" Philip says City will win the league again. I think like there's two things that I think about here. The first one is being, okay, if City do manage to beat Arsenal, I think that could give them an advantage, especially psychologically. It's like, oh, we're beating you. And then they could go on to have this run, and Arsenal have been fluffing a little bit. They have 2 wins, 2 draws, and 1 loss in their last 5 games. And they had been winning like every game. So we're starting to see them drop off and drop points a little bit. So I think that could be quite decisive. The other thing is that for Man City and for Pep, he really wants to win the Champions League with City. And so does he put more eggs in that basket? Does he prioritize those games? How does he rotate for the Premier League games? I think that that's something interesting to think about as well, because they've won the league so many times. Maybe they say, okay, we really want to win the Champions League now. So I think that that's certainly one to watch. And finally, we're going to talk about my beloved Chelsea. We drew West Ham 1-1, haven't won yet. So we were looking to get our first win in nearly a month. Got another draw instead, third consecutive draw. At least we're not losing games.
exactly.
In the first half, Chelsea dominated, in my opinion, and they saw goals by Joao Felix and Kai Havertz ruled for offside. Joao Felix scored the opener, but it was soon canceled out by Emerson. What is it with ex-Chelsea players scoring against us? It always happens. Like, it's
honestly, it is typical. We always get it. Mitrovic always scores against us. Iose Perez used to. Adam Armstrong. Honestly, it happens every single time. Every single time.
Yeah, and the thing is that, like, this was his freaking first goal of the season. I'm like, are you joking me right now? Like, you literally couldn't have written it any better. I was like, typical, of course. But yeah, in the first half, Chelsea dominated. In the second half, they got quieter. Joao Felix was quieted as well. And that's kind of been typical Chelsea. Like, we'll come out looking really, really good for 20, 30 minutes or so, and then just drop off and not have any answers. And now we face Dortmund midweek before facing Southampton at the weekend. So there's a lot of really important games coming up. So, Ken, what did you make about Joao Felix? Obviously, it's his first start back since he got a red card versus Fulham. And all Chelsea fans, at least I'll speak from what I've seen, like want to sign him from Atletico on a permanent transfer because he's been so good for us, even though he's only played a game and a half.
Yeah, he looks good. He looks like the Joao Felix that obviously everyone was clamouring over 2 years ago, and that I know that I've seen at several points since he's been at Atleti. So yeah, obviously I kind of, not nastily, but I just didn't want him to do well because I was like, oh, like now he's gonna leave. He's gonna leave now. But no, he's doing really well. He's actually, obviously, first match aside, to be fair to him, with his red card. But yeah, he looks to be at the moment adapting to the Premier League pretty well, which is the only thing that I had said when he signed for Chelsea. The only thing that I was a little bit concerned about was his physicality in the Premier League, because it is just so different to La Liga. And if you don't watch the two leagues regularly side by side, you kind of don't realise just how different they are. The styles of play in the league and the Premier League are completely different. The types of player, the types of defender that you come up against are completely different. So yeah, that's the only thing I was a little bit worried about, but I thought he played really well again at the weekend. And obviously I know the ball's in Atleti's court at the moment, and they're asking for 140 million euros.
What?
Yeah,
No.
crazy. The release clause is something ridiculous, like 280 million or something like that. So the Atleti are just kind of at the point where they're like, obviously they've extended his contract as well, on the back of him going on loan to yourselves. So yeah, what happens there, I don't know, because Chelsea have spent so hugely in January. I don't know what's going to happen in the summer. But for me, if I was Todd Bowley and if I was anyone in the hierarchy right now and Joao plays the way that he has done, I would just be saying I don't even care, just spend the money, because he's one of those players. There's not a lot of players like him in the Premier League at all, with that much clinicality but technicality as well and skill. There's just not many like him. So yeah, as much as I want to hate on him, like I literally can't hate on him, because he's a player that I love and everyone knows that I love him. And so yeah, I think he's playing really, really well. He's actually shocked me how, I know we haven't seen that much of him, but he's shocked me at how much he has adapted quickly to the Premier League, because he's just looks so strong, and it's just something that Chelsea have not had for a long time. So yeah, for me he's great.
It surprised me as well, because I don't know why I had in my mind that he was like this super lanky player that was just gonna get like pushed over. But if you look at like his legs, he actually has like a lot of muscle.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I thought he was much shorter than he is. I thought he was like 5'7", 5'8". He's like 6 feet or something like that.
Right.
Like quite taller, like a lot taller than I thought that he was. But I didn't know how he was going to adjust to the Premier League, and especially how he was playing at Atletico. I didn't think that he was having a great season, but obviously he was being played about position under Simeone, and Simeone, you know more than me, of course, but really asked to track back and do like a lot of defensive work as well. And I don't think that the formation necessarily suited him so much, but I think that he's looked really good, especially with Enzo Fernandez as well, like that link up. I loved that. It was an Enzo assist to Joao Felix goal. What have you made of Enzo? You know, most expensive player in the Premier League, but at least from my opinion, I think like he's had 2 really good games for Chelsea, and he's played like a bit out of position because he doesn't have that defensive player to play next to him. So he's doing like a lot more defensive work than we would normally see from him as well.
Yeah, I think he had, obviously the first game in the World Cup he didn't play, and Argentina obviously lost. If we go back, that feels like it was like about 25 months ago. It really wasn't. It was like only 2 months ago. It's crazy. But yeah, it's just so mad how quickly things are going. But yeah, I thought he had a really, really good World Cup, but obviously 100, I think it was 130 million or whatever it was. I think that is a lot of money. However, as you say, he has looked really strong already. Him and João Felix are two incredible quality players, really high quality and really, really still very young. So they've both adapted to the league pretty well. I'm such a massive fan of Enzo Fernandez. I think he is such a great player, and I don't think he's going to be one of those players who have a really high peak when they're young and then they kind of dip off. I just don't see that from him, because I think he does play such high quality football. And there's so many elements to his game that he can add to, whether he's an 8, whether he's a 6, he can do both. And I just think that, he's such a fantastic player. So I think, despite the fact, obviously, everyone's going to talk about the money Chelsea spent, I mean, that doesn't bother me at all. It's just, if only people that complain are the ones who can't spend that much money. Like, let's be honest, that's the only people that are complaining. Or talking about FFP and stuff. Like, obviously, who cares about money? Like, not me. So yeah,
I'm not the one spending it. It's not my money.
Exactly. So exactly, it isn't the fans' money. Like, I mean, what people say, yeah, we pay the season tickets and stuff, so it is. But I mean, it's not. Let's be honest, £600 million is not fans' money. It's owner funding. So yeah, but I think Chelsea have recruited really well. I think they've done some really, really good business. So yeah, I'm really actually looking forward to seeing Enzo and João for the rest of the season and see how they get on, really.
I know. I feel like falling in love with João Felix, and now he's playing, and I'm like, oh God, if he goes back to Atletico, I'm just gonna be so sad. Like, don't fall in love with lone players. But I
can't see a future where he's at Atleti. I just can't. No matter what happens now, I just can't see it. I think the only reason they extended his contract was to get a higher fee, because he was nearly out of contract. And yeah, I just can't. It's as sad as it is, and the really annoying thing about it is that I never saw him playing at Atleti shirt, and it's really bugging me still. Like, it's going to bother me that till the end of time. Like, it's going to be one of those things that's just going to really annoy me. But I just cannot see a future where he's at Atleti, unless by the grace of God we suddenly. Obviously, Simeone leaves in the summer, which I'm assuming is going to happen now. I think he leaves in the summer, and we get like a fast forward attacking minded manager who wants to use João, and João is happy to play for. So yeah, that's the only scenario I see him staying at Atleti, but I just don't see it.
This is insane, because somebody literally just put in the comments, does Simeone coach Atletico next season?
So he's never ever said, right? So the club have always come out and backed him, just no matter how bad things have got. And they've done the same this season. However, he's never ever mentioned leaving the club, or even thinking about leaving the club, or that just anything about it. He's always very steadfast. He said, no, I'm at this club, I'm Atleti, like Atleti is everything to me and I'll stay at this club. 2 weeks ago, when we got beat by Real Madrid in the Supercopa, was it Supercopa or the Copa del Rey, one of them, whatever it was, he came out after the game and said, so someone had said to him, like, look, do you think you'll be managing this club next season? And he was like, I think I will do what's best for the club. So that was the first time in 11 years he's ever mentioned leaving the club within the season. If anyone wants to watch his documentary, by the way, you can watch it, because he did say there that there was offers last summer for him to leave, and he said he categorically was like, no, I'm not leaving. As long as the board back me, I'll be here. But yeah, he said, I'll do what's best for the club. So I think he's kind of like staging the exit now. So yeah, I just can't see him being the manager of Atleti next season at all.
That's insane. I couldn't imagine anybody else managing.
I know.
Like,
literally, for like half my so I've followed Atleti since 2004, and he became the manager in 2011. So it's like 2011, 2012. So that's basically all I can remember of Atleti. Like, he's been there nearly 12 years. So it's like mad, because I cannot imagine who on earth they will get in. The only one has been linked is Luis Enrique. It's the only one that's been linked. I'll be happy with Lucho, don't get me wrong, but to follow on from Diego Simeone is going to be
big shoes.
Ridiculous.
That's insane. Well, getting back to Chelsea, I'm going to start going through some of the comments. Sorry, guys, I've ignored you a little bit in the comments, but I'm going to go into like a bit of a Q&A session now. So we'll go through kind of all of the comments that you guys have. So if you have any more, keep them coming. Robbie asked, question, Elizabeth, how many windows do you give Graham Potter? And this is like a super interesting one. I want to get your thoughts on it as well. But I think for me, like the board have categorically said, like, we don't even mind if Chelsea don't get Champions League football because we know that this is going to take time. And they're looking specifically at Arsenal as an example. Arteta comes in, I think he came in 8th, then 8th again, and then 5th. So now he's going on to his like 3rd full season, 4th season. And now you're starting to see everything that happened with the rebuild, and he got rid of the players that didn't fit. He trusted the youngsters and trusted, playing these young players that want to play for Arsenal. And I think that Todd Bowley and co are trying to copy that a bit and say, okay, we don't want to have this hire and fire policy. We don't want to just have like this instant gratification and then the next season we're not playing well and then fire the guy and then go have an entire reboot. They want to play for the long term, and that's why you see Chelsea's transfer strategy is recruiting these super young players who have boatloads of potential. So I think, honestly, Graham Potter gets until at least next season. Even if they don't do so well next season, I think he's still going to be back. I wouldn't be surprised because they know that these things take time. But I do think that Chelsea did so much transfer business that they've expedited it a little bit. I don't think it's going to be 3 years of a rebuild, but we are going through rebuilds now. And I think it's probably going to be another year or two before we can really see Graham Potter's stamp. We're starting to see slight improvements. Like we've conceded 1 goal in 4 games. That's an improvement. Badiashile coming in, replacing Koulibaly. That's made a big difference. I think you're starting to see Enzo Fernandez make a difference. Joao Felix, Mudryk, once Chilwell's back, I think that he's going to make a difference. He's not getting on the ball as much with Cucurella. And I think, you have all these new players and they just take time to gel together. It's not like you can just buy all of these super wonderful, talented players and they're just going to work. No, it takes time for them to gain chemistry. It takes time for them to gain understanding. It takes time for them to get all that stuff to work on the pitch. So I think he probably has at least 2 years, in my opinion. But what do you think, Ken?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with everything you said. Chelsea's transfer strategy has been young players on long-term deals. I think Todd Bowley is just desperate not to be another Roman, and obviously, as we saw, Roman got a little bit trigger happy with the managers over the last few years, and I just think he wants to try and do things differently. Graham Potter, I know a lot of people keep saying like, well, Graham Potter's doesn't want Joao Felix, and Graham Potter does, and actually I think he probably does, but you've got to remember he's never been in this position where he's been able to go and get any single player that he wants. They've been operating in a very specific market and on a very specific budget at Brighton, and he has had his staff around him. His staff's different now. I know a lot of that he took a lot of them from Brighton, but the likes of Dan Ashworth, who is now at Newcastle, who was the chief kind of scout before, and things like that. So it's a lot different. So yeah, I think he at least gets next season. Obviously next season dependent, but we have seen some teams have stuck out the managers very much like Arteta, and it's worked out for them. So I think, it's probably a good thing to kind of change up a little bit. Obviously, you want at least some instant success. You want at least a couple of wins. You don't want to be like losing every game, obviously. But it's kind of he's gradually progressing and gradually getting more positive. So as long as, which I think Chelsea fans are kind of all on the same page now, and that's the hardest part, getting the fans to understand the strategy going into it. But I feel like Chelsea fans do understand it now, and the club are quite communicative in that sense. So I agree with you. I think he gets a little bit a lot of while longer now.
Yeah, no, I do think so. And of course, we want to see wins. But I think back to that season with Arteta, I think maybe it was last season or the season before. I don't remember where, like, Arsenal literally lost like their first 3 games of the Premier League. They were 20th. And then look at them now. So I feel like there is hope. We have a question. Would Mason Mount be a good fit at Newcastle? And I just want to say, before you answer this, Kendall, I don't want to sell Mason Mount. I know that he's not going through his best period, but he's been Chelsea's player of the season for 2 seasons in a row. And I think he's probably played the most minutes out of anybody at Chelsea, but also most players in top 5 leagues. He's been integral for Chelsea, integral for England, and I just think that he's knackered.
Yeah.
And and it's not coming off for him, and he just needs a bit of a break. But I still think he's a very, very, very talented player, and I don't want to see us lose Mason Mount. But would you take him at Newcastle?
At this point, I have always said the improvement of our players alone, I would genuinely take a punt on pretty much like anyone now at Newcastle, because even if they're not in form, I just think like Eddie Howe would improve them, and just the way that we play would improve them. I would 100% have Mason Mount, because he's that utility midfielder that we don't have a lot of. Our midfield is very lacking anyway as it is in terms of depth. You kind of go from like Bruno, who is an elite footballer, to Shaw Longstaff had a decent season, to be fair him. But then we got the likes of like Jacob Murphy, for example, like Elliot Anderson, who is a kid. Like we don't have that. So yeah, I would 100% take Mason Mount, and I think it would be great for Eddie Howe's style of football. But I can't see Mason Mount going to Newcastle anytime soon. I must admit, I don't think that's happening. I can't, like, he's a player I just cannot imagine anywhere other than Chelsea. Like Mason Mount is proper Chelsea. Like he's just like a Chelsea boy. You know what I mean? I can't imagine him going anywhere anytime soon, unless it would cost a lot of money to get him out of Chelsea, I think.
Well, his contract is, I think he has a year or something. Like his contract is almost up, so I'm starting to freak out because
Yeah. No, he'll stay. 100% he'll stay.
I'm like, no, don't sell Mason. And I think he wants to work it out, and maybe that's part of the reason why the performances haven't been up to par as well. Like when you have this contract kind of looming over your head, if you're playing well, that obviously goes into your favor with contract negotiations. Yeah. If you're not, it doesn't. Mason wants to be one of the top earners at Chelsea. Chelsea's whole wage structure has been a bit, I don't know, like crazy during the Roman era, and you have people making like ridiculous wages, and then other, like Lukaku was on like 350, and then he didn't even really play, and then you have players who are playing week in, week out, like Mason making like 100K or something. So I don't know. I just don't see him leaving Chelsea. I really hope that he doesn't. But with that, I think I'm going to close this out. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, for watching. Make sure to follow Kendall on Twitter. I've put her ad in the description box. If you like this video, make sure to drop it a like, sub to the channel as well. Give us your feedback, your comments. I was saying to Kendall before we start next week, I'm really bad at making graphics, but I really want to try to make like nice graphics to accompany all of the information that we're giving you guys. So hopefully I can sort that out next week. But if there's any content or anything that you guys want to see, let me know so that I can get on that. And just a massive week of football ahead with Champions League back. Chelsea play Dortmund. I'm so freaking nervous for that. Man City versus Arsenal. It's just going to be great. It's so much to talk about and lots of content coming up. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. Have a great rest of your day, evening, whatever time you're watching this. And until next time, we're out. Bye.